Good afternoon, I'm Vashan Brown with the Midday News. A special welcome if you're watching on onespotmedia.com. The first batch of 200 crew members from the Adventure of the Seas started to disembark this morning. Now, according to the government, the crew members from Royal Caribbean will be tested, then moved to the Grand Bahia Principe to await their COVID-19 test results. Our reporter Anthony Lugg has been tracking this story and joins us live from Falmouth with the latest. Anthony.
Thank you, Vashan. I'm going to remove my mask for the duration of this broadcast. And I'd like to say that today is what some of these ship workers aboard the Royal Caribbean Adventures of the Seas cruise ship are describing as a happy day. That's because after months of being at the seas, some were finally able to put their feet on Jamaica's soil. Now with me today, I have Mr. Errol Green. That's the Regional Director for the Western Regional Health Authority. Hi, Mr. Green. How is everything going today?
Everything is going according to plan. We plan to start processing the first 200 at 0800 hours. We started at 8, and I'm happy to report that at 11:45, all 200 passengers that were selected for processing have been processed, and they are now getting ready to be on their way to the Bahia Principe Hotel where they will be, where they'll be staying.
As it relates to the test and the swabs that have been taking place, talk to me a little bit about that, please.
Well, all 200 of them have been tested. The tests have been sent to the lab for processing, and we expect that we'll get those results certainly within the next 24 to 48 hours. But everyone who has disembarked the ship has been tested.
All right. Can you say when the next 200 will be? I know you said 48 to 72 hours, but which day exactly are we looking at?
That is a logistical matter that I would rather not address at this time, but we'll be moving expeditiously to get all 1,404 passengers off the ship.
All right. Thank you very much. That's Mr. Errol Green, Regional Director for the Western Regional Health Authority. Now, we've also been informed that there is some tension aboard the cruise ship. That again is because some of the workers aboard the cruise ship are insisting that they do not want to go to the Grand Bahia Principe Hotel. Here's a voice note we received.
Hear our voice, know that we are going to protest to stay on the ship if we don't get solid and clear information and what will be done to us, because we have come this far. We don't want to make another step that's going to jeopardize our freedom of getting home sooner. We are way above stress limit right now, so we need clarity so we can stay calm and believe in the process and do it the right way. Otherwise, we're going to protest and we're going to stay on the ship.
Thank you. So you heard it from Mr. Errol Green, Regional Director for the Western Regional Health Authority. All 200 passengers who were slated to get off the ship today have been processed and are being prepared to make their way into the Grand Bahia Principe Hotel. The security forces are here ensuring that everything goes smoothly. We will be monitoring the situation here in Falmouth and will provide you with update in subsequent newscasts.
All right, thank you very much. That was our reporter Anthony Lugg reporting there that the first 200 crew members from Adventures of the Sea, they've already started to disembark, and we'll continue to monitor that story for you. Meanwhile, the Chief Medical Officer, Dr. JACQUILINE BISASOR-MCKENZIE, says the first batch of ship workers to disembark included those considered a high priority. Now, for those Jamaicans who will be in home quarantine, the authorities are planning to group them according to parishes. And the Chief Medical Officer has explained why a pregnant woman on board the Adventures of the Seas was not medically evacuated. After the ship arrived on Monday, she was transported to the Cornwall Regional Hospital, but the Health Ministry has refused to give details, citing patient confidentiality. Dr. BISASOR-MCKENZIE says the decision was made after careful evaluation by medical professionals on the ship and on land.
the information that I have was that the condition of the person would allow for the ship to reach here safely. Of course, it is always a medical evacuation itself comes with risk, and one has to weigh the importance of what is the intervention that would be put in place, that needed to be put in place immediately, that would warrant the evacuation. And on review of the medical report, it was agreed that the person, the condition could have, was stable enough to allow for the ship to arrive and for the safe disembarkation of the person.
Meanwhile, more stories from the families awaiting their loved ones who are on the ship. Here is Anthony LUGG.
We're happy.
Tanika Gale jumps for joy hours after the Royal Caribbean cruise ship Adventures of the Seas pulled into the Falmouth Pier on Tuesday. The reason? Her sister-in-law Melissa finally docked after months of mental frustration.
You just have to strong to be in an environment like that.
She's saying this because just like her sister-in-law, she also works on a ship. The only difference is she returned to Jamaica in March before the borders were closed.
I do understand what they're going through on board, and only a person that works on a cruise ship will actually understand, because when you're locked down and locked up in a one room and you're not seeing anyone, you're there by yourself, that mentally can affect you if you're not strong enough, and it's already been a stressful environment that you would have already worked in.
Those aboard the ship will disembark in batches of 200 every 48 to 72 hours and will be tested for the COVID-19. Persons who test positive for the virus will be isolated in government facilities, while those who are COVID-free will be allowed to quarantine at home for 14 days under strict monitoring.
If there's no outbreak on board, that is even better for you, even though you're going to test everybody, but there was no outbreak. And to be honest with you, they might be safer on board than coming into an environment that we have so much outbreak.
So, the process of getting all 1,044 occupants of the ship on land could take up to 2 weeks. But Ms. Gale issued this warning to the government.
Look, we want them to come home, but this is something needs to make sure that they are in self-quarantine. He says he's going to do this tracker thing, make sure that his people are on it, and make sure that they're staying home for the 2 weeks. Because even when I came home, I wasn't positive or anything, because I wasn't in any of the affected places then, but I even put myself in 2 weeks quarantine.
Anthony LUGG, TVJ News.
Medical doctor and cabinet minister Dr. HORACE CHANG has rubbished calls for mass COVID-19 tests in Jamaica, declaring that mass testing is inefficient and ineffective. Dr. Chang says the structured format being used by Jamaica's health professionals is the best approach to fighting the pandemic.
Medical officers of health, supported by a team of public health inspectors, public health nurses, district midwives, clinic nurses, community health aides, which means effective sentinel surveillance, one, based on a number of primary care facilities across the island, and hospital clinics, which have enough reach to give you adequate sampling. In addition to that, quick contact tracing.
Dr. Chang adds that even though places such as New York in the United States has ramped up testing, COVID-19 has spread rapidly due to inadequate contact tracing.
Professional review of the approach adopted by the public health professionals of this country and the Caribbean will demonstrate they have adopted the most efficient and best approach. The only countries that can compare in terms of success with them today is Taiwan, which is a big, rich country, not part of WHO, and Vietnam, which have adopted similar principles. It's based on a traditional public health process, which very few countries have kept alive. Mass testing is an inefficient, ineffective means of monitoring COVID. That's a fact, and a waste of resources.
As the government seeks to reopen the economy, concerns are being raised about the safety of citizens. Chief Medical Officer Dr. JACQUILINE BISASOR-MCKENZIE says a system is in place to secure citizens' safety once the economy reopens. She was speaking this morning on PAAC 106 FM's Morning Agenda.
There's an entire system that manages this process of case investigation and contact tracing. What the community health workers, the community health aides in particular, do is that they have close interaction with the communities. And our intention has always been that we would have a 1 in 1,000 ratio of community health aid to population.
The CMO explained that the system includes community health aides assessing what happens in the communities and identifying the vulnerable groups in an effort to manage individual cases.
If we are able to achieve this 1 in 1,000 ratio, then you can understand that we will have a better understanding and be better able to detect cases where we have persons who have returned to the country who need close monitoring, persons who have developed symptoms. It enables us to do our fever and respiratory surveillance much better in able to know exactly what is happening and be able to act immediately.
We now take a break, but we'll be right back. Please stay with us. Welcome back. Continuing the news now. Learn to live with COVID-19. That's the new message resonating from the government as Jamaica, like the rest of the world, seeks to reopen economies and return to normal. That was also a central part of the message from the Health Ministry at this week's COVID-19 Special Select Committee of Parliament.
The living with COVID-19 concept is not so far-fetched, as health experts anticipate that the disease will be around for several months, if not years more. And so, here in Jamaica, that approach is guiding reopening. At Monday's press conference, Prime Minister Andrew Holness noted that cruise ship workers who are repatriated will be monitored while in quarantine.
Persons allowed to quarantine at home will need to consent to have their locations geofenced using smart technology.
That is already raising concerns. But at Tuesday's online meeting of Parliament's Special Select Committee on COVID-19, Committee Chairman and Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton explained that that is just part of the plan to use technology while living through the pandemic.
We have gadgets that not only will use the mobile phone to locate persons or to track movement in terms of COVID management, but there are others that will be special devices that would be linked to an individual that will be used and managed remotely solely around the COVID response. So there's a tracking device equivalent to a watch, I think a watch or something you put place on your body, your hand, and that will provide some monitoring just as it relates to the COVID.
Hospitals and health centers will also be linked using technology to share information to respond more quickly to COVID-19 cases at first, but eventually on other health issues as well. He says until modern medicine catches up with the pandemic, whether through a vaccine or some other treatment, this new norm is now guided by the new living with COVID approach.
It really is, how do we manage the response and how do we mitigate against the risk in a way that minimizes death and minimizes downtime and minimizes the spread.
With fewer new cases each day, at least 2 consecutive days with no cases, Dr. Tufton believes Jamaica has not been doing badly.
Data, for example, that around death. The truth is we have done well. Our death rate is 1.7, I think 1.6 or 1.7 I saw yesterday, %, which by benchmark international standards is not bad. The last time I looked at the international standard, it was something like 2.8 or closer to 3%.
He says there's no patient in intensive care, suggesting that no COVID-19 patient is now in critical condition. Also, only approximately half of the 300 COVID-19 beds are currently occupied. However, committee member Maurice Guy had concerns.
Might I suggest, and we speak of the death rate, and I'm happy that we are at 1.7 percent. Could I, however, Minister, make a suggestion, which I would like to record it as well, that we do not fall into the position that Russia felt it had. And could I recommend to the ministry that we look at the death rates for the period last year and compare to this year to see whether we might be having persons who might have died and not recorded as having COVID.
I have no problem with that, member. Just to reiterate that we're not being complacent at all, but we're taking actions that sometimes attract criticisms because we are very cautious.
More than a month after the government's Supporting Employees with the Transfer of Cash Set Cash program was launched, some persons who lost their jobs because of COVID-19 are yet to receive a single payment. The payments are to be made in April, May and June, but when the Finance Ministry faced Parliament's Public Administration and Appropriations Committee PAAC meeting yesterday morning, it was revealed that some issues, including technical glitches, led to the delay.
The issues accessing the government's set cash compensation package have been highlighted over the past month. At Wednesday's PAAC meeting, Chairman Dr. MCNEILL again raised the issue as he says scores of persons laid off because of COVID-19 were still being denied the payment, seemingly because of the technical issues between employers and the Finance Ministry.
We all here represent the workers in the sector, and you cannot have a situation where 2 months after this thing has been announced and put in place, you have a situation where you have workers that don't know where they stand, where they know they qualify, they can't seem to get the information. There's a element of distrust that's now being engendered because of problems with the system.
The PAAC chairman questioned Finance Secretary Darlene Morrison as in one case, persons who were laid off in mid-March were disqualified from the payments because of misunderstandings with information uploaded to the ministry.
Workers started getting text notifications that they no longer qualified for the grant as they have been reemployed. You can imagine the further crisis of angry calls to companies demanding explanations. The Ministry of Finance called say that their system parameters they designed were incorrect. Workers' names and TRNs will arise on SO1s for all legitimate payroll activities for a prior period. However, they did not realize that this should not have been a disqualifying factor.
According to Ms. Morrison, the issues had been sorted out and will be rectified this month.
We have a batch for 12,265 that will be made this week.
But, all right. These persons that are going to be paid this week, just to clarify, are these payments for April or payments for May?
Could be April. Right,
yeah.
It would be for the ones that should have been in April.
Despite this late payment, however, committee members had other issues.
The P45 for those employers who don't end up submitting. We don't want to penalize the employees for what they're not responsible for.
Exactly.
So what I'm asking is for, if nothing is yet put in place, if the ministry can put something in place, find a way where we can assist these particular employees.
Also, member Michael Phillips questioned the cutoff time for application in light of the challenges. The Finance Secretary said, currently there is none, but it is being considered.
I think it is really unfair to these employees too, because I mean, outside of the glitches that you may have, but I am going to use the word reluctancy of some of these employers in trying to assist these workers who they have to lay off for some reason or the other is grossly unfair to these workers.
There seems to be a slight difference of opinion as to whether all the glitches are worked out between you at the Ministry of Finance on one side and those in the industry at the other. I'm going to suggest, members, that we want to see this resolved by next week.
The ministry agreed to complete a report on the fixes for the issues by Wednesday, May 27.
Sports now. Reggae boy and Watford defender Adrian Mariappa is today in his first day of isolation after contracting the coronavirus. The 33-year-old received a positive result after the entire Watford first team squad was tested on Tuesday. Mariappa says he was not experiencing any symptoms and found it bizarre that he picked up the virus. He says the only time he left his house was to jog in the mornings. And that's the Midday News. I'm Vashon Brown. Join us at 7 for Primetime News Package. On behalf of the news, sports and production teams, have a good afternoon.